Now, if you watch any amount of financial videos on YouTube or read any financial journals or newspapers or anything about the U.S. economy, you have come across the man known as Jerome Powell, or Papa Powell, as some people call him, or the Fed head, or whatever it is. Jerome Powell is the guy in charge of the Central Bank of the United States. And given the fact that he is the Fed chief and the Fed head, he has a lot of responsibilities, but we may mention this guy, and some of you out there who are new to the financial world might not know who he is and what the Fed head actually does. We're going to talk about that in the video, give you kind of a brief synopsis so you can kind of understand why people talk about Jerome Powell all the time and why it is important to talk about him. But before we get into that, I want to remind you guys that Webull is having a new promotion right now where they are giving away 12 free stocks to anybody who signs up to their platform and makes an initial deposit. Now, from the very jump on that, just the amount of stocks at the lowest you can get for each one of them is like $34 if you total it all up. So it's like getting $34 for free. If you get the stocks, you just decide to sell them. Or of course, you can get started on your investment journey by getting those free stocks and holding on to them and seeing if they go up in value. Some of them may pay you dividends, so you might want to hold on to them. Any number of things, but this offer is going on right now on Webull, so definitely check down in the description box below and see if you can take advantage of it. Jerome Powell's been around for a while. He graduated from Princeton University in '76. He also went to Georgetown University Law. He was part of the Carlyle Group. He went in and established his own financial firm. He's been appointed several times by several presidents. He served as an undersecretary for domestic finances and domestic economics under George H.W. Bush. Barack Obama has had dealings with him and appointed him. Of course, Donald Trump appointed him to Fed head. And he now serves as, in one of the more stressful times, to be the chair of the Federal Reserve during the pandemic and now during an economic downturn. And he's dealing with inflation and he's dealing with the recession. And that is why you're hearing so much about Jerome Powell these days. Now, as far as the Fed chief is concerned, a lot of people don't really know how the Fed chief works. The Fed chief doesn't really report to any of the three branches of government. He's obviously not the judicial or the legislature. They like to grill him on Capitol Hill a lot and try to get him to do their job, but he doesn't really have to do anything that they tell him to do. He doesn't report to the president, and the president doesn't tell him what to do, and then he goes and acts it. He is kind of like the president of the U.S. financial system, and why it's an important role is because the U.S. economy is the largest economy in the world. The dollar is a worldwide currency, and a lot of what Jerome Powell does and a lot of the decisions that the Fed board makes does affect the rest of the world. Now, there is a board of governors who make the decisions, and what Jerome Powell and any other Fed chief's role really is to enact the will of the board and the Federal Reserve. And the main goal is really to keep a high amount of money flowing through the United States, as well as make sure we have full employment, and of course to stave off things like recessions. Right now, he's also fighting inflation, and you will hear a lot about how he's fighting inflation and the fact that Jerome Powell has decided that we are going to rather aggressively raise interest rates, or the Fed interest rate, which does translate down to you, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the reason that they're raising rates is to kind of cool down the economy so they can get inflation under control, so it doesn't cost us $20 next year to buy a jug of milk. Now, there are some downsides to that. A lot of people pointed out that, when this strategy has been done in the past, a lot of people have lost jobs. That is definitely a concern. And again, why what Jerome Powell does affects you. And back to the interest rates, or the Fed interest rate, the higher that goes up, that means there's less money they're putting out. And what the Federal Reserve is right now doing is all that money they printed a couple years ago for the stimulus, they're now buying back a lot of those bonds and trying to consolidate a lot of that debt. And by raising the interest rates, it does help the US dollar, which the US dollar right now is the strongest it's been in decades. And in fact, that is a good thing in some ways for the United States and a bad thing in other ways. It's also spurring on other countries to start looking into cryptocurrency and some alternative assets. But right now, with everything being shaken up in the economics of the entire world, the dollar is the safest bet. And that, again, was a strategy that was intentional to get a lot of these other countries to invest in the dollar. Remember, the dollar is the only way you can buy oil, and oil is a very precious commodity, and especially in Europe, because Europe gets despite all of its green efforts, a majority of its oil is coming from Russia. You can start to see how this all gets very complicated when things go awry in the world. So it is on Jerome Powell to kind of not only be mindful of the United States economy, which is his first and foremost role, but also to understand that what he does will affect other markets and how that can benefit the United States, or how the United States could negatively affect some of our allies around the world, is also a concern that he has. But again, it really all comes down to the board of governors, and the board of governors, again, their job is to decide what direction the U.S. economy is going to take and what things the Fed is going to do in order to try to maintain some sort of balance. It's almost kind of playing like whack-a-mole sometimes, where, you know, something pops up over here, you smash that down, and then something else pops up, and that's kind of the job that the Federal Reserve has, and the Fed chair is the voice of that board and the voice of the board of governors, and is the one who conveys to the American public and to Congress and to the Senate and to the President of the United States what plans they have to kind of stabilize the economy. Because again, at the end of the day, economics is really comes down to math, and when the equation gets off in some places, it is the job of the Federal Reserve to correct it. So hopefully that clears up in this quick video why people talk so much about Jerome Powell and why he is such a significant figure, especially given the state of current world affairs with the Russia-Ukraine war, with China's economy being in trouble because of their issues with mortgage. Well, that's a whole other issue. But the problem with China, where they might be going bankrupt if they can't get a handle on this big mortgage loan scam that they got going on, and third world countries and what they're doing, Japan and having its kind of downward slump now, and all of these other things are things that the Fed chief has to take into consideration, and the things that he does affects them as well as us as citizens of the United States of America. So I want to know what you guys think about this. Do you think Jerome Powell has done a good job managing all of these crises with the pandemic and with the recession and with inflation and with the wars and with all of the changes in government and changes in regimes? You know, he was there for Trump, and now he's under, well, he's not under Biden, but he's working along with the Biden administration after coming off the Trump administration. And even though they can't really dictate what he does, you know, he's the Fauci of the economic world, essentially. And what do you think about that? Has he done as good a job as Fauci, or not as good a job as Fauci did with the pandemic? Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until next time, we'll be here for more tips and tricks and some explanations of some things, and just in general stuff here on Wrestling with Finance, the YouTube channel for people who have wrestled with finance in the past and look to do better and understand more about it in the future. Thank you guys for watching this video. I'll see you next time.